What is positive cognitive behavior therapy and why is it going to be so helpful to you? We're going to take a look today and find out what it is and how you could use it in your everyday life. I made a video the other day about cognitive behavior therapy, which I feel is a very useful therapy. It's the most successful therapy in the world at treating things like depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, phobias, regular neurosis. Very, very practical. And it's very useful. So I thought today I would go back to the Positive Psychology website, very useful website, and take a look at what's called positive cognitive behavior therapy. It's a bit of a long article, but it's a really great article. And if you look at it and think about it, I think you can get a lot of resources and a lot of ways of approaching your own neuroses and life issues in a way that's very helpful. And even if you don't as such have neurosis, you just want self-development, I think you'll still find it very, very useful because it ties into this thing of reflecting and integrating and making sense of your life. So let's take a look at the article, okay? Okay, so it's positivepsychology.com. It's a great site. Another great site is called verywellmind.com. Those two sites are really them. So positive CBT, let's take a quick look here and see, okay? So in case you're wondering, first of all, what's cognitive behavior therapy? The idea with cognitive behavior therapy is that we had early in the 20th century this idea of the talk and cure psychotherapy, but it takes anywhere from months to years. What a lot of people were finding was that people just have repetitive negative thoughts. If you can just fix these thoughts, they can solve their problems. And there's two groups of people in the therapy things. One is people are trying to get to the deep existential aspect of their problems, and they want to transform their very being. And other people simply have a headache with not being able to get on a bus, not being able to get out of their house, always worrying. They just want to get past this pain points. This is where cognitive behavior therapy comes in. Very, very useful. So what about the positive ones? Let's take a look here and see, okay? So if you look at cognitive behavior therapy itself, it seeks to help individuals relieve themselves of psychological stress by looking at their thoughts, their feelings, and behavior, okay? So basically what happens is whatever you think about, create your feelings, and that creates your behavior. And then your behavior, by the way, results in a lot of reactions, and those reactions result in your thoughts. So say, for example, you're in poverty consciousness, you're in a state of always thinking the worst is going to happen, okay? Your thoughts are poverty consciousness. Then your feelings are kind of depressed and that you can't do anything, okay? And then from that comes your behavior. Let's say, for example, you're thinking I want to apply for a job and you think you can't do it because you have poverty consciousness. You think nobody's going to hire you for that job. And your feelings are despondent. You either don't go for the interview, or if you get to the interview, you fall flat in your face. And because you just fell flat in your face, you go back out again the same. Let's give another, maybe more subtle version of this, okay? Because that's kind of a bit dramatic. More subtle version is, let's say you want to do something artistic. You want to be a singer, you want to be a dancer, you want to be a musician, you want to be an actor. And you get on stage and you consciously believe you can do it, but deep down your thoughts are negative and you doubt yourself. So you get on stage and you put a very kind of not very good, very nervous performance, okay? Because your feelings, so your thoughts are, I can't really be good on stage. Your feelings are scared shitless, and your behavior is you're like a rank amateur. What happens is you do a terrible performance and then you come off and you now have this memory of this terrible performance, okay? This could also happen in different environments. I used to work in sales and I had some of these situations whereby I will go in not thinking as positive as I could be. My feelings will be doubting myself and feeling like, nervous and tense. And then I do a terrible presentation. And then I'd have that memory of that sale presentation that sucked, or that sales negotiation that sucked. So relationships, you know, anywhere it is, it starts with somehow you got a negative thought, results in negative feeling, results in negative behavior, and then it turns like a loop, okay? So that's CBT in general, okay? So this model above basically shows that our thoughts, feelings, and actions affect each other. Our psychological problems can partly be traced back to two things: faulty thinking and unhelpful learned patterns of behavior, okay? So we have to change our thinking and change our behavior patterns. So CBT highlights the importance of examining these thoughts. Now, traditional CBT, how it differs from positive CBT, is traditional CBT is I got a problem. So I'm nervous, I can't talk to girls. I have a problem. I can't get out of the house. I just terrified walking out the door. I have a problem. I can't go for an interview, terrified interview. I have a problem. I can't airplane. As you get in an airplane, I get a panic attack. Okay. I've got a problem. Every day at 5 o'clock, I get really depressed and I feel like I can't cope. Okay. So focus on fixing the problem. Where positive CBT takes a slightly different approach. It's just like traditional CBT, it seeks to understand the underlying thoughts and feelings linked to these actions. But it also focuses not where things are faulty and skewed, but where things are going well. It finds opportunities to create a positive shift in their belief and thoughts so it can change the way we experience life. And what's very useful about this approach is still cognitive behavior therapy, but instead of focusing on the problem, you focus on the solution. It's terribly important in life. Don't focus too much on the problem, because when we just keep thinking and thinking and thinking the problem, we get stuck in the problem and we can't see new options. Okay. Instead, we need to focus on the solution. So this is very important. All right. So let's say, for example, let's say you're a shy person and you want to go for an interview and you're always terrible in interviews or presentations. And you keep focusing on, I'm going to try and fix my shyness. Well, you know something? I don't think you can fix your shyness. I think your shyness was developed very early in life, and you cannot change that personality type. So what you have to do is focus on something else. So you might be able to focus on, when I was doing debates in school, when I had something to debate about, I was always very strong in the debate because I wasn't thinking about it. I was just arguing my point. I was good at arguing my point. Okay. So if this person, for example, instead of trying to fix their shyness, they see it as an opportunity to debate a point. And so they shift their thinking and focus on what they are good at. What they are good at is arguing the point. Okay. Versus trying to overcome shyness. So think of that logically. Think of how many people you know who are shy, who have difficulty maybe getting on stage and making a speech, who have difficulty going for an interview, have difficulty doing anything that involves standing in front of people. Yet those same people in their own house will talk for hours and hours very freely. So clearly, this person is got a strong competency in one direction, but not in another direction. So just think of how many people you know, maybe including yourself, who struggle in front of other people, like in a presentation, interview, artistic event, whatever it is, and yet they can talk at home. So they're strong in one area of interpersonal communication, but not on another area. And the issue here, it might vary from person to person, but often a person is a bit shy. And if you're shy, you probably can't become unshy. The reason why you can talk so well in front of other people who you know is you know them, or you might be very strong at talking in a professional setting because you feel it's your job. But to just stand in front of people as you, maybe as an artist or something, or as a presenter or in an interview, scares the shit out of a lot of people. So don't focus on trying to overcome the shyness. You'll just be disappointed. Instead, focus on using those strong traits. And that's the nice thing about positive cognitive behavior therapy and what you can do. Now, you can go to a cognitive behavior therapist or therapists who use cognitive behavior therapy. What we're going to do now is take a look at some of the approaches they take, but you can also use a lot of these yourself. And once you try and get into them, you start to understand the philosophy behind it. And that's very, very useful, either for helping you with your neurosis or just helping you with self-development. So let's take a look. So there are two main types of therapy here. What they're mentioning is Dr. Aaron Beck's cognitive therapy and Dr. Albert Ellis's rational emotive behavioral therapy. Okay. So if we take a look here in the 1960s, Dr. Beck conducted experiments to test different concepts of depression. And we have a reference here to History of Cognitive Behavior Therapy, 2019. He found that individuals with depression had a pattern of negative thoughts, which often recurred automatically. Okay. Now I had severe depression when I was about 20 years of age, and I can vouch for that one. It's like every day at 3 o'clock, I'd suddenly get depressed. So it's so systematic and definitely linked to the words that you're using, the language in your head, the thoughts, repetitive thoughts in your head. This type of depression helps, this type of CBT helps clients to challenge their dysfunctional thoughts, try out different positive beliefs and interpretation. Let's take a look at his model. Situation, automatic thoughts and images, reaction, emotional, behavioral, and physiological. So your physiology changes as well, okay? How many of us get sweaty palms and we get our stomach is butterflies in an interview, for example, or when we're speaking on stage. And then next time we go to speak or have an interview, you start feeling that again. Oh, here we go, okay? And it again kicks off the whole loop, the whole pattern of, so emotions behavior, and physiology. And also you have to remember what's emotions is always starts with thoughts. Everything starts with thoughts. Your feelings are not first. Your feelings come out of thoughts. Okay. Happy feeling, happy thought, happy feeling, sad thought, sad feeling. It's not like you just have a feeling. A feeling is an output. Okay. So let's take a look here. This CT model can be adapted in positive psychology as it looks at emotional, behavioral, and physiological reactions that occur due to automatic thoughts and images. Positive CT helps students identify them, okay, and find, helpful approaches, like what I just said there, of finding a way around it. We also have here REBT, Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy. The goal of REBT is to help the individual identify the irrational belief, challenge these beliefs, and change them into rational ones. So Dr. Ellis created the ABC model, which would later become the ABCE model. So that's the activating event. What kicked it off, okay? An example I gave in the last video was a guy I knew who was traveling on a plane. So smoke comes out of the vent. It's all solved. He moves out the chair and they fix it, so on. But then the next time he's in the plane, again, something comes out of the vent. What's the statistical odds of that happening? But next time he gets in a plane, the third time he gets in a plane, he now has a phobia. As soon as he gets in the plane, he starts remembering that twice before being in the plane, twice before the smoke. What if this is it? And all those thoughts start playing. And for a while, he struggled with a phobia, although he got over it eventually. But I'm just saying. So that's the activating event, the shocking event. I see a lot of people. I used to, at one stage, I used to do traditional Chinese therapy. And, one interesting thing I found about that was I used to get a lot of people coming in with trauma. And this was really amazing. And maybe it's because I used to study before I studied psychoanalysis, I would notice trauma. But it seemed to be a big thing that a lot of people that came to me with physical problems, okay, so my background, psychotherapy and also Chinese medicine, a lot of people who came to me had things like, everything was going fine, and then I had that car crash. And I wasn't physically hurt, but ever since then, I've had this problem. So they'd have a health problem. Not a health problem because of the car crash, okay? They would have a health problem because of the, after the car crash, 3 months later, they would start having some stomach pain or something. And again, it was not diagnosed by the doctor. It was something irritable bowel maybe or something like that. Or they had they couldn't sleep anymore. Something that had nothing to do with the accident as such. Everything's gone in my life and then my dad died. Or everything's gone in life and then my relationship blew over. Okay. So some kind of trauma, and next thing they'll start getting some health problems. I said, when did the health problem start? As always, something traumatic happened. Okay. And it could be a physically traumatic thing, it could be a mentally or emotionally traumatic thing, but there's an activating event. So that's my own clinical experience from doing Chinese traditional Chinese therapy, which is acupuncture therapy and all that, was that everybody pretty much, if not 100%, 99% of people, nearly everybody who came had a trauma. Okay, there's a belief. They are interpretations, perceptions, and assumptions, expectations of given situations. So it's not just what happens. So we believe. I think we'd see this very much if you watch any movies, TV shows. They'll often show a character who has some kind of trauma, and he's affected or she's affected throughout the show. And then they have a cathartic moment whereby they have a situation where they see the event again from a different angle because of life experience, or they have an intervention, or they meet that person, they argue with them, whatever it is, or they suddenly piece together what really happened, and they realize that their interpretations of the event were very weird and caused a lot of problems. It's a trope on TV and movies, and it's actual reality. In reality, it's not just what happens, it's how we interpret what happens. So, for example, very common thing is somebody has a car crash and they get very nervous going out, and they start thinking about death and get depressed. Now, car crashes, statistical odds, it can happen. But what about all this belief stuff? So one person in a car crash, they hop back in the car next day, don't think about it. The other person is like full of depression for the next 3 years. Think about that. So it's their beliefs and their thoughts or interpretations which are having an effect. One person gets morbidity, which is a real killer. Morbidity, when you get morbid thoughts, you have to get out of that loop very quickly, or it's very negative. Okay. Consequence. How we feel and behave as a consequence. Okay. He would later change that the A, B, C, D, E model, where he'd also add in dispute and effect. Okay. Dispute means looking for arguments and evidence that go against our irrational beliefs. We need to kind of talk ourselves out of it. Okay. It's okay if I fail that interview, or if we're not very good at acting on that performance. Nobody's going to shoot me. I mean, back in the old days, you used to throw tomatoes. I mean, you could always eat a tomato spoon. So why are we getting so upset? Because I didn't get a job, I failed an interview, relationship. Why am I so upset? Okay, that kind of thing. Okay, so looking for those arguments. Okay, positive CBT takes the ABC model a step further and helps individuals respond more positively, even when things go wrong. Okay, so we have here in 2006, Martin Seligman adapted the model, used the ABCDE to explain that people can learn to be more optimistic. Adversity is the event or situation that happened. Clients are encouraged to include details of the situation and to be specific and objective. It looks at facts and truths instead of interpretation. So you can do this. You can go to a therapist and do this, or you can do it yourself. Go back over some aspects. See, when we look at trauma, we tend to oversell trauma. We tend to see trauma as, you got hit by a car, you got beaten up, somebody tried to kill you, you're in a war zone. But, trauma is things like your relationship of 5 years failed. That's a trauma. You didn't get the job promotion, and it looks like you're never going to get that job promotion in that company. And maybe it's the end of the line for you in that career. That's a big trauma. You didn't get to the college you wanted to go to. That's a trauma. So there's lots of different traumas. And so to go back and whatever you can't integrate and is causing you an issue in your life, you go back and take a look at it and create a kind of audit about it, all right? It says here, belief is now the thoughts that run through the person's mind during a situation, okay? So you had a way that you thought about it, and that created a kind of belief about it. And then that kicks off your feelings and then also your physiology as well, okay? Clients are invited to write down all the things they can remember without filtering these thoughts. So just get it out there on the page, okay, or in the session, or talk to somebody about it. Consequences include how the client felt and how they reacted during the adversity. Clients are asked to be specific in describing their emotions, reactions, and actions. After identifying the consequences, clients are then asked to look at how their consequences align with their beliefs and if this makes sense, okay? So, you say you're a very upbeat kind of person, but now you're sitting at home and you want to leave the house because you had a car crash a year ago. How does that align with you as a person? So you're trying to talk yourself into having a different approach, okay? During the disputation stage, the clients are challenged to generate evidence to demonstrate how some of their beliefs are inaccurate. So you might have a belief that if I go in a car again, I'm definitely going to get creamed, okay? They're also asked to look at optimistic possibilities and alternative beliefs. Well, is it possible that it's okay if you're in somebody else's car? If somebody else is driving your car, it's also okay. But why is it not okay if you're driving the car? So you try and reason that, okay? Clients can dispute beliefs through things like how a belief is not entirely true. Like, how is it that you're safe if somebody else is driving, but you're not safe if you're driving? What is more accurate compared to specific? Possible outcomes of each belief, more appropriate responses, finding possible solution. Let's take another one. Let's say you believe you can't find a nice person to marry. All the members of the opposite sex or the same sex or whatever the hell it is you're after, they're all shitheads. Okay, so is that really accurate? What about your parents? Why some family members, friends have a successful relationship? Why don't you have a successful? Are all men bad? Are all women bad? Or is everybody bad? To kind of rationalize and see where you're just being hurt. Okay. And then energizing shifts the E part, A, B, C, D, E. Okay. So if we go back to this one, for example, so what we're looking here is the activating event, the belief, the consequence. We also have the dispute, and then we have the effect. So energizing shifts the client's focus on how disputing inaccurate beliefs and changing how they feel, respond and act. Often the client feels relief, becomes more optimistic, and can choose more helpful behavior. So what I would say, that's REBT. I'm going to give a link to exercise. Again, positivepsychology.com/positive CBT. Okay. So it's like working with yourself. If you can't find somebody to do therapy, just work with yourself. Write the stuff down. I used to be in the landing of my parents' house, and I'd have these verbal conversations with myself. Okay. So get it out. And the talking cure can also be the talking to yourself cure. All right. Solution focused therapy, SFBT, was developed by Steve DeShazer and Inzo Kim Berg in the 1970s. What is in solution focused therapy 2019? Most kinds of therapy focus on individuals' problems, what happened, but in this one, of course, they focus on future goal orientation. Okay. So it says here, positive CBT often uses SFB techniques. Here's a few examples of SFB techniques. Previous solutions. The therapist asks, how did you fix a problem previously? This is a big part of therapy, guys. If you go to a therapist is going to try and find out, well, it depends on the therapist you go to. Let's say humanistic therapist rather than like psychoanalyst probably won't give you anything, just let you talk. But let's say humanistic psychotherapist, for example. That's, well, you said that you failed this exam. Did you ever pass an exam? And nearly everybody can say yes. And what did you do differently, and why did that work? Or a relationship or a job or something. You just try and look at a situation where you did it right in the previous time. Present and future focused questions, okay? Instead of asking questions related to the past, client is encouraged to look at what's currently working, okay? The therapist asks the client how to envision themselves in the future. An example of a future focused question is, what would you be doing in a week that will let you know you're making progress? So you've had a tough time recently. I know that you had the death of a family member, for example, and things have been very bad. But if I was to ask you a week from now, what have you done this week that makes you feel good? What do you think you could do next week? So if I ask this question next week, that will make you feel that you did good, that you made some progress somewhere in your life. And for example, I think a lot of people, they get hung up on trying to make everything personal. So let's say, for example, you're having some bad situation, somebody very ill in your life, somebody died, you lost a job, relationship, whatever it is. And you're just having a hard job coping. And you find all this self-help stuff, psychotherapizing kind of stuff not useful. You can start with something very general. Like, let's say, I'll repaint the house, I'll fix the car, I'll take up cookery. Try and do something practical that's positive. If you find it difficult to deal with the emotions and the feelings and thoughts, just try to do something that's upbeat and positive, and that directs you towards some sense of success, which comes down with some self-esteem, which kind of gets you back into doing something useful and not thinking too much about the problem. You see, the thing is, when you get derailed into this, the problem, well, obviously there's no solution to that. Einstein's famous quote, no problem was ever solved in the same state of mind which caused that problem in the first place. So we have to forget about the problem. Do you ever have a headache and notice, oh, the headache's going now? No, it's not. It's like 1 minute the headache's there. Then like an hour later, oh, the headache went. Where did it go? You forget about the headache, isn't it? You must forget about your problems. I know you have to know your problem and understand how to work with it, but you kind of have to forget about it in a way. So this is this thing of, moving forward, what can we do positive? Okay. Compliment the person, do more of what is working, scaling questions. A scale of 0 to 10 is used to help the clients assess the situation where they're in it, evaluate and track their progress. Okay. And also you can put things like, in a scale of 1 to 10, what was the hardest thing in your life? Okay. And they might have like the death of a family member or big accident or something. And then say, well, you just lost your job. How does that rate? Because emotionally it rates a 10. But against these other life terms, well, it's not that big, it's only a 5, okay? So, all right, we have another one here, functional behavior analysis, okay? A functional behavior assessment studies behavior, but also looks beyond the specific action. The approach is often used to understand why a person acts a certain way, okay? It seeks to find facts that may be associated with behavior, as well as factors that are related to when the behavior does not occur. So this guy called Beck, he explains that during an FBA, that's a functional behavior analysis, a problem is analyzed using the ABC model, okay? And again, if you look at the ABC model, just remind ourselves, that's the activating belief and consequence, all right? So defining the behavior, collecting data, developing a hypothesis, developing an intervention, evaluate the plan. Now, obviously, to do all that, you need a therapist, but you can define your therapy, your behavior. You can look at the data about it. You can start working on, like, this is something you might do, say, for example, you're having some situation, you're working with your family. I'm just giving all the examples if you don't go to a therapist. And it's great if you do go to therapists. I'm thinking what's practical things we do as well, because even if you go to a therapist now, he's around. So with your family, you can even do this as well. Collecting the data, developing a hypothesis. When was it that this person became the depressive or started bulimia or anorexia? What kicked it off? And as a family sometimes, because often these things are interconnected, the whole family can have a think about it. Okay? Because often there's family trauma and family situations, and one person's reaction is to go off and get something like bulimia or anorexia or something like that, or depression. Okay, and then going more into intervention techniques. That's if somebody is in denial. Okay, you intervene. Okay, so And he finishes off here by talking about what's the difference between the two, and then he talks about this thing, okay, Fred panic. So basically, what's the difference? The difference is it's easier to overcome something when you don't focus on the problem, you focus on the solution, right? Says here, with CBT, it's a collaborative effort between the therapist and the client. And what I'd also say is, okay, it has all this about therapeutic report and alliance, but I also say you can use a lot of this yourself, okay? So stuff like shifts to strengths and solutions, set goals, positive self-monitoring, okay? And then it goes into various techniques and talks about the viewing, how you can change your view of things. So often our viewing is wrong, but we don't know how to change because we're very negative in our viewpoint. So acknowledge the feelings and the experience, okay? To acknowledge how I feel. I feel right now that I can't do it. Rather than trying to say happy thoughts or put on a happy face, pay attention to something different, okay? So trying to get the person to look at positives in their life, because often people are stuck in the negative loop. So try and look at the positive. What have you done well in your life? You can't just say it's all the disaster. Must something you did well somewhere, okay? Focus on what the client wants in the future. Start thinking about what you'd like to achieve in the future. Challenging those unhelpful beliefs, and using spiritual perspective is also very good. This is Bannock Saito Hanlon's 2000 Three C's of Spirituality: connection, compassion, and contribution. Okay, so therapists invite clients to explore connection with something bigger themselves. This is very, very useful because, and it gets back to another thing I like to talk about sometimes: gratitude. When we have gratitude, it puts things in perspective, and we move away from the world is focused on me and my problems. And the same thing when I have connection, compassion, and contribution, I can look at the bigger picture and see things differently. I have the change doing here, okay? So positive CBT also says patterns of behavior and finds ways to break that pattern. This is where it's very useful because we're very habitual, okay? So for example, you're an alcoholic, you're trying to recover from alcoholism, and you go to a social event and you hear the cling of glasses, next thing you're down the bar, okay? Because you've been stimulated by this. I can hear the ching, okay? Same fat people. You go into a restaurant and you can smell you can smell the barbecue or something. You're gone. Okay. All right. The first invention used to change the setting is to pay attention to the patterns of behavior. These patterns can be things that happen on their own or involve other people too. They're inviting to change a part or repeating actions through two specific techniques. So how do I get rid of this thing whereby every time I hear glasses ching, I feel like alcohol, or every time I smell some nice food, you know, I just go crazy, okay? So paradox. Therapists invite the clients to explore the problem and to find ways to intensify it or to make it happen more frequently. The client tries to make it happen deliberately. This allows the client to accept that there is a problem and maybe even let it play out. So let's say, for example, you're trying to give up chocolate. So, sit in front of a box of chocolates every day and see what happens. And maybe you'll fail, but you'll start understanding after a while why it is that I can't keep my sticky fingers out of the chocolate box. Link new actions. So clients identify something they can do when the problem occurs, new behaviors introduced to break the problematic pattern. This new action is ideally something that will turn out to be good for them, which may be a challenge too. So for example, every time I feel like hitting the chocolate, I have to now earn the chocolate. So I have to hop off on my bicycle and bicycle for 2 kilometers, then I can have a chocolate. If I do this every time I want the chocolate, well, 2 things are going to happen. One is I'm not going to eat 20 chocolates unless I want to cycle 40 kilometers. And secondly, if I do cycle 40 kilometers, I probably won't get fat from the chocolate anyway. So you get the idea. You're trying to do something else. The ching of glass, you might go and have a visualization to see that reminding you of something else. I mean, probably if you're that bad trying to buy bars and stuff, and just as an example, so you might visualize that I really love juices, okay? And so instead you order a juice. You try and do something like that, okay? You have talk about changing feelings, getting people to do homework. There's something nice I want to do in that here as well. Okay, mentioned a few others: discovery orientation, observation experiments, manipulative huge article. Yeah, okay, I think I'll just finish with these 3 because it's actually huge. You can check this article out, positivepsychology.com, positive CBT, because it's a few thousand words. There's a lot of content. Solution focused industry. So you start having like you use like a visualization of where you'd like to be. So this exercise, the therapist, and remember, you can be your own therapist. Therapy begins at home, guys. In this exercise, the therapist follows a detailed sequence of steps to help clients imagine a recurring problem in terms of behavioral manifestation and consequences. The therapist then invites the client to imagine what reality would look like to them and others if the problem were miraculously solved. As part of this exercise, clients will explore small actions taken in the past that have helped them work towards resolving their recurrent problem. Connect more deeply to their strengths and resource energizing. So let's say, for example, you're an alcoholic, you're trying to avoid alcoholism. You might look at things like, but you're a very family oriented person. So look at things that you did well and that made you feel good and you didn't jump for the bottle. And you try and focus. So let's say, for example, you always like going trekking with your family, but you didn't necessarily drink alcohol. So you make a point of going trekking, but you don't drink alcohol. Okay. And, have those positive feedbacks, because in your visualization might be, if I didn't have this alcoholism, I would be more there for my family. And we've had some really nice events, and I think I'm going to destroy my marriage and everything and keep on being an alcoholic and lose my kids and lose my life maybe. And instead, you remember those happy times that you had some great outings with your family, and then you visualize that, and you try and do that. You try and focus on these, positive things that even though you're tempted with alcohol, you're thinking, well, I'm having a really nice time with my family. We're having this, whatever it is, what we're doing together, cycling together, whatever. Okay. Number 2 is reframing critical talk. This is terribly important. Critical talk is really negative. So the person will look at their critical talk, and I have some videos on self-criticism and talk about this. So the words, we're living in words, and the words we use have a huge effect on how we are in the world. So changing the words that you use, okay? And that will have a huge effect upon you as a person, all right? Check out my videos on dealing with the inner critic, very useful. Number 3, strength spotting by exception finding. Okay, this exercise helps clients to explore the strengths and resources at their disposal when dealing with the present complaint or problem. To do this, the client begins by identifying an exception to their complaint or problem at time that did not occur. Okay, the client then explores the circumstances around the exception and strength. So, a time that he did something good, that you're really good, and where you show the strength, and then focusing on that strength. Okay, so you can check out the article yourself, positivepsychology.com, positive CBT. Hopefully, what we've just done in this video is just give you some idea of tactics and strategies. Obviously, if you go to a therapist, you're going to get more of a kick out of this than you do it for your own. But even if you go to a therapist, I do believe therapy begins at home. The therapist can't always be there. Ultimately, a therapist is there to give you a support for a while until you're strong enough to stand on your own 2 feet, and you should be internalizing the therapist. Okay, so you should become your own therapist ultimately, all right? And fair enough, if you need to go back to therapy, no problem. The other thing is, this isn't just for people who've got psychological problems, also if you want self-development. So just look at what we've just done here and look at what positive cognitive behavior therapy is talking about. It's all about looking at how we have some situations in our life, and they result in a thinking pattern. And that thinking pattern results in feelings. And the mixture of those negative feelings and those skewed thinking patterns results in behaviors. And those behaviors result in negativity in our life, which spews the negative thoughts and the feelings and the behaviors. And we end up in mental loops, basically. And because we're living in language, the language we use has a big effect, all right? And the big takeaway I always feel with positive cognitive behavior therapy is, don't try to fix what you can't. You see, your basic personality, both the kind of emotional person you are, but also the way your brain is wired, the way you process things, the way you think, what kind of mind you have, it's all developed in the first 8 years. So you're not going to be able to change that. And when people fall too much on the problem rather than the solution, is trying to change the unchangeable. So you find your strengths. And what I find a lot of people have is they don't think they have any strengths. They don't feel there's any solution. They don't think they have any strengths. And the difficulty you have in a therapy situation with a person like that is, what's your strengths? I don't have any. Anything positive ever happened in your life? No, it didn't. And they're just stuck in that way of thinking. But actually stuff did happen that was positive. You just don't remember it because your mind is stuck in a place that's a dark place, a negative place. So what we have to do is shift ourselves out of that by starting to observe. And this is like I'm a big fan of diary writing and writing your story and finding out what you really think and feel. And you can tweak it and you'll change. The story you write initially will be different from the story you're going to write over a period of years as you gain new perspectives in life. and you'll change your thinking. There was a nice movie, I think it was back in the 90s, called Prince of Tides, I think it was. Here we go, Prince of Tides, Nick Nolte and Barbara Streisand from the 90s. And it's, maybe cornball in a way, but basically the guy's a lot of trauma. His sister's going to therapy, and uh, I think he falls into therapy. He goes to therapy, falls into the therapist course. Not a good idea. But the whole idea of it is that their parents were assholes. Certainly his dad was an asshole. And, there was abuse and stuff. But at the end, it's like he comes to realize it's okay that his dad is the way, because he can't fix his dad. And his dad can't fix himself. And on some level, he still loves his dad because his dad's his dad. I think it's good. It's just the whole idea of re-envisioning your life. And as you go through different stages in your journey of self-exploration, you're going to become more compassionate. But initially, you might be very angry, okay? So that's the whole thing, is take away these positives and have a positive approach to fixing. Focus on your positives, focus on your strengths, and take that time out, because nobody can fix you. I always meet people want to fix. You have to fix you. You're different from everybody else. You have to fix yourself and spend that time learning from it. Check out this article. Very good. Also, there's a Very Well Mind site. We'll have some nice stuff as well. And check out some of my videos on the inner critic and so on. And we can all use some of these positive cognitive behavior therapy techniques, regardless if you got therapy, go to a therapist, or regardless if you got any mental health problems. Simply, they're very useful techniques for, we should all develop a mental toolbox. And what I'm focusing on this channel is that develop this mental toolbox of having different ways to think about things, which will empower you to have a more fulfilling life. Okay. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.